Well, it looks like it's about time to start class. I'd really like for you to talk to me about what you thought about Mike.
Pretty cool guy.
Huh?
Pretty cool guy.
He was the, you said he's a cool guy?
Pretty cool guy, yeah.
Okay. He'll tell it like it is.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting what them talking about it. It was really neat, seeing it like explained, but I figured everything out without actually having a story, piecing together the story. I really found that really
I thought that was excellent, him taking it from arriving to the crime scene
He
all the way
walked us
to
through it,
conviction, step by step, how they put that puzzle together. I didn't hear what you said.
He walked us through it, yeah.
Yeah, he walked you through an entire investigation that, the way that the detectives do it. And I thought that was excellent, the way he illustrated, what detectives do. Was there anything that kind of surprised you that, he talked about?
The gruesomeness of the dude's death.
Okay, and it's still an active investigation, but he is involved in one right now that was even worse. He said that was the worst he had ever seen, the blood spatter was like on 3 walls, and they have to identify every drop.
How does someone have that much hate in their body?
I don't
just
know.
never understood that.
That's what was getting me the whole time. I don't understand how anybody could do something like that.
Especially to a 92-year-old man. I mean, and I thought it was great how Mike presented that, the guy was a fighter. One blow should have killed him,
That first blow.
and he kept on
Any
coming.
one of them should have killed him, right?
Mhm. And it's just real sad, like you said, that somebody has it inside them to do that. And then the mother saying, to the son, you're part of this, you go ahead and do a blow too. Wow, where did that come from? Anything else? I mean,
I just wonder, what kind of psychological damage that guy had, because he said that he felt the dude's hands were on his throat. I wonder just like how bad he is, and how bad mentally he is, because
it very well may be he's got PTSD from seeing that and from being involved in that, and that would figure in with having that kind of a reaction. But, Mike didn't pull any punches. He said he hoped that,
he hopes that he does.
yeah, he hopes he feels those hands around his neck for the rest of his life. When you see something like that, though, I mean, he's seen it all. He's seen murders of babies, of toddlers, of infants, 92-year-olds. I mean, he was investigating a robbery, a burglary, and they had 3 different agencies investigating this. And what was funny was they were all concluding their investigation, and he came on scene, and he said, well, we've been called out too, and they said, well, we've already processed it. And he said, well, do you mind if I go ahead and look around? And he found 2 major pieces of evidence, a gun and a windbreaker that had been overlooked.
And just how do you miss those?
You got me. You got me. But what is also very interesting is the technology that is coming up through the ranks in policing. I can show you a film that's a little long, but just on the crime lab. My stepdaughter is the administrator over a crime lab in San Diego, and they just put out a film showing what they do. And, I might see if I can post that and make that your assignment to watch on Friday, that way we don't have to come in. So, I'll see about that. Anything else? You know, Mike, it's interesting that they just don't have one case at a time to work. They have, you know, multiple detectives that have multiple numbers of cases. And, you know, it amazes me that there's just that much evil in the world. Well, do you have any questions about anything about what Mike said? Now, he's willing to come back if you all wanted to. And, you know, he can answer more questions about police work or, anything that you all want to talk to him about. Would you like me to invite him back? Okay. Like I said, he's been in every mode of police work except bicycle riding and canine. And, he was an MP in the Air Force, or I guess it's Sky Police in the Air Force, before he was a cop, a citizen cop. He has served, let's see, I know in Utah and Arkansas, and it seems like one other state, maybe Texas. I think it was Texas. And, you know, 30 years of experience. So. You know, one of the things that Mike kind of touched on was police discretion. Does anybody have an idea really of what police discretion is?
Kind of the officer has the option in given certain circumstances to perform an arrest.
That's pretty well it. The officer has leeway in some crimes, in some circumstances, to apply his decision on whether or not to proceed with a ticket or furthering the investigation or whatever. And so 5 factors influence a policeman's decision here. The nature of the crime, all right? You got a jaywalker and a murderer. You know, that's a no-brainer. You know, the cop probably give a warning to a jaywalker and say, don't do that anymore. But, you know, you can't overlook murder. You know, that's one of those things that's out of the perimeter of the discretion of the patrol officer. The relationship between the alleged criminal and the victim. That is particularly important in domestic violence cases. Now, you know, you get called into a domestic violence case, and it's a he said, she said. He did, she did. You know, and, you know, they both allege that the other one hit them and pulled knives on each other and hit them with a ashtray or whatever, and yet there's no marks on either one of them. Well, that might be a little bit of discretion of just saying, listen, we're going to have to separate you two tonight, but not pull them in. But I believe, I know there's states, and I think it's Florida as an example, that when they are called out, they have to arrest. And if there's any indication of domestic violence, they have to, they can't just choose one or the other, they have to take them both in. That's not, let me reverse that. The one that, if there's an obvious victim obvious injuries, and it can be determined that the other person, inflicted those injuries, then the policeman is required to take them in. You know, it's not like, well, you know, we come out here every, Friday, and this is just the regular thing, we'll let it go again. Can't do that. But there are circumstances that police discretion can be used, but that's not one of them. The relationship between the police and the criminal or victim. Police discretion. Let's say that cop pulls over a car speeding, and when he walks up there, it's his mother, but she's borrowed a car from somebody, and he's pulled her over. It's only 7 miles an hour over the speed limit. And he said, well, okay, Mom, slow it down. That would be an example of relationship between the police and the criminal. Race, ethnicity, age, gender, or class. All right. You have a youngster that is, okay, better yet, many times cops have rolled up on teenagers that's drinking. All right. Now, some of them can be really hard on them and haul them in, but others will say, look, dump it. I don't want to see y'all doing this again. That's a great example of police discretion. Okay? We've talked about this gender thing. I'm telling you, that's a very good thing about police discretion as well, on whether when a policeman pulls over a woman, if she's going to get a ticket or not. And my former partner, like I said, he said he would always give the ticket. And the reason is he got burned. This woman pleaded with him and said, please give me a break, please give me a break. I can't have another one on my insurance right now. And it was just a little bit over the speed limit. So he gave her a break, and she went and filed a complaint against him for harassment. Yeah. So this is one of those things that depends on the guy, but you know, my former partner said he always gave tickets to women after that. Departmental policy. All right, if they have a policy about, you know, okay, every time a woman gets pulled over, she's going to get a ticket. Well, then, so be it. But you know, they might have a policy of saying, okay, it's up to you whether or not. I misplaced my clicker. We were talking about domestic violence a minute ago. Domestic violence is basically defined as violence between intimate partners, between spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, partners, or those informally intimate relationships. Basically, depending on the state, if you are living with somebody, if you are in residence with somebody, the charge can be looked at for domestic violence. Roommates can be charged with domestic violence. Okay? A good example of the role of police discretion. Until the 70s and 80s, police treated these incidents as private matters between couples. They've been tightening up because, one reason is because of the O.J. Simpson case. And another, you know, it's just that these cases are getting more and more violent and more serious. Says that there were more than 630,000 incidents reported in 2014 alone. And that's significant. this is a hot topic right now. Police abuse of power. Goodness gracious. Let me, tell you, one of the things that in a policeman's training, they are taught the continuum of deadly force. And they are taught step by step what to do to defuse a situation and keep it from becoming deadly, but if it does become a serious threat of life, what they can do and what they can't do. You know, the first thing they're supposed to do is just try and talk to the person and try and get them to quiet down and such. And it goes on, and then it starts getting toward the last of it, the serious stuff, and like, one of the things that a person, a cop can use is a baton. Now, they are told where they cannot hit. You know, they can't hit you in the neck with a baton. They're supposed to try and go for right here and try and get that where you'll kind of crumble, but they can't go for the kneecaps. You know, they can't try and do anything that's going to permanently injure or kill you.
Behind the knee?
Huh?
Behind the knee?
I think that they can do behind the knees.
That seems like it'd be pretty effective.
Actually, I think Mike is an instructor in baton weaponry and combat, and that might be something we can talk to him about. He's a firearms instructor, and he is like on the river, on the scuba patrol and such, so whenever they have a dead body or need somebody diving, they'll call him. You know, he's just multi-talented. One of the things that we've learned is if you mace somebody, you can't tase them. Because there are some of the maces that when you add a tase, it causes automatic combustion and they go up in flames. And, you know, that looks kind of bad when everybody's filming it, you know, and,
So what if you tase somebody and then mace them?
you know.
So it's just either or?
Well, a
And
taser
if you
is a-
did that, that'd be okay.
Isn't
Because
it-
charge isn't there.
Isn't a taser above in the use of force continuum
Yeah.
of mace? Yeah.
Mhm. They're coming out with more and more types of pepper spray. And now they've got different types, like they've got one that can shoot a stream like 10, 15 feet away. They've got a mist, they've got a foam, and the foam, what it does, it's made to kind of stick and then drip. And they've even got some now that when it hits like the forehead and such, and it starts dripping, say that a couple of hours later, you go in, you know, and you wash your face or something else, it'll activate that again. You know, but they've got those kinds of tools to use. They've got the taser, and I don't know if y'all know this, but before an officer can carry any of these, they have to go through it. And so they have to be pepper sprayed. And it's not just, okay, wash your eyes. No, they spray you, and then you have to run a course with that in your eyes. Do what?
Sounds fun.
You immediately, you run to one station and you have to call for help, officer in distress. And then you go to another station and you have to start hitting somebody with a baton. You know, and another station you have to start fighting them. And it just, you know, you have several stations, and then you can sprint, and they have like a big water trough, and people, you know, dunk their heads and such trying to get it off, and then they, you know, try and wash it out for you, but you cannot carry mace without going through that. And Which, in a way, I don't understand, because now the public can buy basically the same type, and they don't have to go through it, you know. But I think the main thing is so they'll have empathy.
Maybe just get those at Walmart or something like that. I believe I saw.
I don't know if you can get the really, really potent type.
Get like-
It's more like at the gun shops and such that you can really get
Yeah, I
the
get that.
good stuff.
Like the armory off of 67, 167,
Mm-hmm.
they've got a whole bunch of stuff there, and I think that one of the weirdest ones is those like the fish ones, like all the kid ears or something. Like you put your fingers in it, and the ears of the cat, so to say, are pointy. It's real aggressive looking.
Then for the tasing, what they do is they'll have two guys on each side of the guy, and the one who gets tased has a choice of getting tased, I think, 5 seconds with one thing, or 3 seconds if I think you get the barbs. I think it's the barbs. But anyway, they have a choice between 3 seconds and 5 seconds. And they record your response, and you can't carry a taser unless you have been tased. And it's really something. Use of force. So, actually, even though there's a lot of publicity right now, most cops, I mean, police use force pretty infrequently. I've been on many, many patrols, and they can be pretty boring. You know, you can, you know, you'll drive, you don't want to ever do the same routine every day. That can set you up, and so you have to try and figure out new places to go and circle around and such. And you look to see if you see anything, and you wait for calls. But we might be able to get Mike to tell you the time that he thought he was actually going to be killed in a fight, and he might share that with you. Said that was the most scary part he's ever had, scary time he's ever had as a cop. And you know, I think he said he used everything he had, and he still didn't stop the guy. Force tends to be the lower end of the spectrum. People don't realize that if you grab for a cop's gun, that, you know, that gives him the right to protect himself any way that he has. And if you know, one of the things we're also taught is if a person has a knife, they are as, it's amazing how dangerous they are, because by the time, when you notice they've got a knife and coming at you, by the time that you draw and can start shooting, they can already be there. It only takes just very few seconds when they're running at you to make it with a knife, and you know you're trying to get your gun out. Yeah.
One of well, not really my favorite, but the most distressing one that I've seen of a police incident was I forget the name of this where it was, but the officer arrived on scene to see a man with a knife. It was like a butcher knife or something, and he walked backwards like 500 meters, all the while pleading with this man to not do anything with the knife, until eventually he just sprinted at him and he had to take him down.
Yeah, I've seen that one. And contrary to what you're being told, cops don't want to get into violence. They don't want to get into a fracas like that, because the big goal for every cop is to go home and have supper with their family that night. They want to go home and be with their family. They don't want to get into a fight and hurt somebody or have them themselves be hurt. Another thing about abuse of power is corruption. Now, in the 30s, in 1930s, corruption was rampant. You know, you had commissioners, you had commissioners, you had chiefs of police, you had the patrol beat guys, all on payrolls of crime bosses. And supposedly that's cleaned up now, but now I'm gonna tell you, I do not know of any corrupt cop, but I'm not saying that there aren't any. There are. And you've got one thing's called grass eaters, and these are officers who accept payoffs that typical police work would bring their way. So, let's say that a person pulls you over, I mean, a cop pulls you over, and they're offered a bribe not to give them a ticket, and they take it. That would be a grass eater, okay? That they're supposed to, okay, another way, if a business pays a cop to make sure that they're included every day in their rounds, okay, that would be a grass eater. Meat eaters are officers who actively use their power for personal gain. So, they, you know, guy busts somebody, busts a drug guy, and pockets some of the evidence, and doesn't book it all. And then puts that on the side and makes some extra money selling some of those drugs, okay? That'd be a meat eater. I want to throw something out to y'all, and I want the citizens to tell me what y'all think about this. What do you think about gratuities for cops? And what I'm saying there is, like, if they go to a restaurant and in uniform and the restaurant says, "We appreciate your work, your meal's free." What do y'all think about that?
Okay, so,
No, it's fine.
Basically, gratuities are frowned upon by departments. But, that's the only thing that I know of that is somewhat, that the police somewhat participate in. There are some businesses that, will, either give them big discounts or give them free food. Now, what would be the downside of that?
It could be seen as a bribe.
How so?
So like if something happens and the cop, that same cop that ate for free is on their side, it could be seen like, oh, you're doing that for them.
That's exactly the rationale, that, it could be seen as a bribe. All right, so, you know, we get free meals over here, why don't we eat over here on a regular basis? And, that way, we get some free food, and first of all, there's always a cop presence there, so that
You get
deter
protection.
crime. And if there's, you know, say that there is a crime there, well, these guys have been really, really good to cops, they're cop friendly. And so we'll just go ahead and make sure that they're put to the top of the list, and we're going to make sure that they get, you know, the best of service. See,
So it's just frowned upon, not illegal?
it's, is it frowned upon? The departments will say, you're not supposed to do it, but there are a lot of places that, you know, as soon as you walk up, you know, they'll just, hand you the food, and then they'll say there's no charge, and by that time, I mean, you know, but, there's, most cops will, I would say, take the free food. But, that's about the only thing that I see that would, be,
I'm sorry, is that really that big of a bribe though? It's a meal, like,
good point.
I think it's, at a certain point, it should be like at the owner's discretion. If, you know, just the occasional, oh, thank you for your service, but if you're just actively giving, you know, free food to all officers, it's like, I think it should
how
be at
often
the
are they
owner's
gonna come to
discretion.
that rip shop? They're not gonna go there every day.
If it's free, they would.
If it's free, they would.
Well,
There's one cop I know right now that basically eats lunch at the same place every day because he gets a
I
free
could
meal.
not do that.
I would.
The same food though, every
Oh, I
single
would order something else.
Okay, you can eat the whole menu. I get tired of it, I would,
Just the same place over and over again.
yeah.
Now, here's a catch that y'all might, I think, totally agree with. If you're out of uniform, you can't say, I'm a cop. You know, like, same restaurant, and you walk up and say, well, I'm a cop, I'm off duty. Or you can't ask for a discount. You know, like, you go to a shop and, well, you know, by the way, you give police discounts, you're not allowed to do that. You know, and so, we try our best to keep everything ethical and above board, but every once in a while, things slip through the cracks. There are, if the police make a mistake, if the police force starts developing problems, if there are problems within the police force, there are ways to control that and to deal with it. First of all, let's talk about the internal affairs units. The internal affairs units, they will investigate complaints. They're detectives. They will go where they're supposed to, go and do the investigation, find out what happened, and then turn over their report, like to the sheriff or whoever. Many of the departments combine internal affairs with standards. And so the IA department will not only investigate complaints, but they will make sure that the officers are maintaining what they have to do to be certified, to remain certified as a police officer. And they also do the investigation when they're about ready to hire a police officer. And they're the ones that take them through the process of hiring. If an officer has been accused of misconduct, they can have all kinds of punishment. Some of it is unreasonable. I know of one deputy, and I don't know how it happened, but his camera got damaged. It dropped or something, it got damaged, and they put him on a week suspension. Another one had a car, and it was involved in kind of a wreck, and yet they just gave him a slap on the hand. It didn't make sense. But they will investigate their own. If somebody, and one of the things that the cops, everybody really harangues on is if you see something dishonest, report it. And when I was going through my interview, one of the interview questions was, you have just gone into a house that's the scene of a crime, and you notice that there's a carton of cigarettes on a dresser and your partner takes 2 packs out of that carton of cigarettes, what would you do?
Report.
Do what?
Report.
Report it. I think what I said was I would confront him and tell him that, you know, we're not supposed to do that, and he needs to put them back, and if he didn't put them back, then you start taking it up the ladder. But, pretty good chance I'd report him anyway. Okay. But, if an officer is accused of a crime, IA is the first ones that start investigating it. Officers charged with misconduct can face criminal prosecution, disciplinary actions, and this can lead to resignation, dismissal, or suspension. Then we have civil review boards. Civilian review boards. Citizen committees formed to investigate complaints against the police. No power to discipline officers. So, this is made up of non-police personnel. They investigate complaints, but they don't have any power. They have to turn over their findings to another agency or another individual. What would be the good? What's the positive of civilian boards?
So, like a form of checks and balances.
Okay. Form of checks and balances. What else? I think I know where you were going with that.
Like if the police are, if like all the police are corrupt, you need somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Better community relations.
It takes the police out of the loop of investigation. It also increases community relations. And so, if you have a civilian board, it's, you know, you don't have that blue code. I mean, you try and get somebody, you know, hoping that everybody be honest and such, but, you know, at least you don't have the cops in the investigation, part of the investigation, that can influence it in a negative way. What would be the negatives about having a civilian board?
They may not be professionally trained.
The biggest complaint is they don't really understand what it's like to be a cop. And therefore, they don't understand the situations and the things that the cops have to go through, and so it's easy to play, you know, Monday morning quarterback. It's an entirely different thing when you're right in the middle of it, and you have to make those decisions in fractions of seconds. There is a Blue Bloods episode, and I just think it's phenomenal. It talks about this civilian review board, and this lady, she wants to fire a cop for falsifying a report. The cop said, "I didn't falsify it. I know exactly what happened. I wrote it down, and that's exactly the truth." The only problem was, there was a video, and it did not verify what the cop said. But the cop has been known to be completely 100% honest and not have any unethical behavior. Well, the final thing was that Frank Reagan, the commissioner, had the one that was really pushing for the cops to be fired. He said, "I know that you are one that likes to go on the firing range. Why don't you go through one of our scenarios here in the kill house. And, she said, okay. And so he used, it's called simunition. And, it's kinda like a piece of chalk that is fired from a special gun. And so she had the simunition gun. And first thing that, happened was somebody jumped out in front of her and she got him, and then, she had another guy, run after her, that had a knife, and, somebody else, and so she missed the last one, and she came out and she goes, wow, she goes, that's nothing like I've ever been through before, and he goes, exactly, he said, what color was the, turtleneck on the guy who had the knife? And she goes, blue. I'm sure it was blue. Well, it was red. And he goes, how many shots did you take? How many shots did you fire? And she said, 7. And he goes, are you sure? And she goes, absolutely. She goes, I know, I counted 7. And he said, you did, I think it was 13. And she goes, there's no way. And he goes, your magazine's empty. And she goes, absolutely no way. And she pulled it up, and it was absolutely empty. And he said, during the adrenaline and the episode, we see things, but because of the adrenaline rush, because of everything that's happening, sometimes our appraisal, our memory is not going to be completely accurate. And that's one of the things that cops have to deal with when they start working with witnesses. You know, I witnessed a purse snatching one time. There was 3 of us, and we saw this lady, her purse was snatched, and so cop interviewed me, and I said, well, he had on khaki pants, he had on a t-shirt and a brown windbreaker and sneakers, and he ran down that street. The next one said, you're crazy. He had on jeans, he had on a regular shirt, and he wore a hat. And he ran down, you are right, he did run down that way. And the third one said, no. He said, you know, the pants were such and such, and the shirt was such and such, and he got in a car and drove off. And the cop said, you know, I appreciate y'all, but with such a variety and vast amount of, you know, everybody's saying a different thing, because we can't use any of y'all's statements, because everything was absolutely different. And yet, I'm still convinced I was telling the truth, and I'm sure the others are convinced that they were. You know, during the adrenaline, you see things, and sometimes you see things that aren't there, or sometimes you see things that are there, that you don't think they're. It's about time to start washing down your desks. I will try and post that thing about the crime lab, because it is kind of interesting. It's awfully long, but at least it goes through most of the departments in the crime lab and what they do. And so, because I'm supposed to give you an assignment that's supposed to last an hour, and therefore we don't come on Friday, your assignment is to watch this video, and I'll get it posted, and you watch that Friday instead of coming to class, unless y'all just have a burning desire to have class.
I think I can watch it.
What?
So I think I can watch it.
Okay. Everybody go for watching the film?
Sure.
All righty. Well, y'all have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy yourselves, be safe, take care, stay healthy, and keep it legal.